MLB Power Pros!
Hello everyone, welcome back to the PowerUp video tutorial series. This time we're going to be talking about editing individual players, and I'll give you some tips and tricks for how that all works. So first, if you're looking at a roster and you want to edit a player but you notice that you're not able to, for example, let's say we want to edit Brian McCann. We go to look at him and we can't edit him. If we go back, you'll see that he doesn't have an edit icon next to him. He actually has the eye icon. So what I'll do is, anytime that I have a player that I can't edit, remember to replace them with a copy in order to be able to edit them. So now we have the edit icon available to us. I'll go ahead and edit Brian McCann. So first thing, up in this right hand corner you'll see a save and an undo changes. This player editor screen, unlike the roster editor, doesn't save immediately. It saves when you hit the save button. So if I change something about Brian McCann, let's say I'll change the save name to Brian McCann 2, I have to hit this save button for the changes to Brian McCann to be persisted in the database. So if I make changes to Brian McCann, say I change it from Brian McCann 2 to Brian McCann 3, and hit the back button, when I come back to Brian McCann, he will still be Brian McCann 2, because I did not save my changes. Right next to that save button is an undo changes button. So let's say I change Brian McCann 2 back to Brian McCann 3, and then say undo changes. It will change it back to what I had before my last save. So for example, if I change it back to Brian McCann 3, hit save, change it to Brian McCann 4, when I hit undo changes, it's going to change it back to Brian McCann 3 and not Brian McCann 2, because this is the last value that we saved before we hit undo changes. So undo changes will take it back to the last saved value. And you can see when the last save was up here in the upper right. To the left of this, we have the baseball reference link. This will open a page in your browser to that player's baseball reference page. And so now you can see that we have Brian McCann here, and we can go and look at his baseball reference page. This could be used for a lot of things. You could use it to update his statistics if you want to take a closer look at what his stats are for a given year, or if you need his number for some reason, or just want to look at a picture of him and be able to compare it with the way the appearance looks. It's nice to be able to open the baseball reference link quickly, and one of the big advantages of editing on the computer versus on the PlayStation is that you can, you could do a split screen between your baseball reference and your PowerUp app and be able to look at both at the same time. On the first page of the player editor, we have the personal tab. This tab encompasses all of the properties that are on the first 3 or so pages of the player editor from the game. So pretty much everything up until the appearance. Most of these things are pretty self-explanatory, so I won't go through all of them, but there's a few things that have some nuances to them that I'll explain. The first one is this custom player toggle. You can switch it on or off, but what this actually controls is that little blue bar that you'll see below your player's name in the game when you've edited them. So normally when you're editing players through the game, that blue bar is going to show up automatically as soon as you make any edit to that player, and you have no control over whether or not it's shown after that. With PowerUp, you're able to control whether or not that blue bar shows up. Now, if you make an edit in the game, it will end up overwriting what PowerUp wrote, and that blue bar will show back up. But this will let you control whether or not it shows up. By default, it's always going to be off, but if for some reason you want to mark particular players for some reason, you can always just use this to flag them with that blue bar. Another thing that has some nuances is this pitcher type. For position players, it will always be swingman. And the reason for that is that in the Power Pros game, all position players have the pitcher type of swingman, and none of the pitchers in the game have the pitcher type of swingman. So as soon as you pick a position player, it is locked to be swingman. However, if you change the primary position to pitcher, you now have the option to choose between swingman, starter, reliever, or closer. Next, we have this voice option. This controls what voice the Power Pros announcer will use in the game. And all of the players, the MLB players from the game's voices are in here. One cool thing about this feature is we have this find closest button. And what this will do is it will use a SoundX algorithm, which is it's a common algorithm that's used to find phonetic similarities between words. It's used a lot for searching, but in this case we're going to use it to try and find the closest name to the one that we have here between the first and last name. So if I just say find closest now, it's going to find Brian McCann again, because that is the name that's in here and that's the closest it found. But let's say I change Brian McCann to be Cy Young. I'll change the save name to be Young as well. And I say find closest. The closest it could find was Chris Young. Now, this isn't always going to be perfect. The SoundX algorithm is really good for some things, not great for others. And part of how it works is that it throws out all vowels when it's doing a comparison. So if you find that you don't like the comparison that it made, then you can always go and pick your own voice afterwards. The next tab is the Appearance tab. In this tab, you have access to all of the properties that you can edit in the Appearance page in the game. So first, we have the face. It includes all of the generic faces that the game has, as well as all of the MLB player faces that the game had. The eyebrows, skin, and eyes all follow the same logic as the game, so for MLB players, you don't get the option to pick all of those things. And for some things, you get to choose eyebrows and skin, but not the eyebrow thickness, and so on and so forth. All of the different things for appearance either have some sort of description or color swatch to try to describe what option you're picking. You don't get to see a full preview of what the player will look like, but we do our best through here to try to give you an idea of what your player will look like when you're done. The next tab is the Position Capabilities tab. These values are chosen based off of the default values for players of certain positions in the game. The player's primary position will always be an A, and it will be disabled. And every other position will either be a G, an E, or an F, depending on what that primary position is. Whenever you change the player's primary position in the Personal tab, that will go and update the position capabilities. The primary position will be an A, and positions that are similar to that one will be E's or maybe F's. We can get into the default values more, but they're just based off of the values from the Power Pros game. From here you have the opportunity to change those values to be whatever you want, depending on how much of a utility player your player is. The next tab is the Hitter tab. All of this is pretty self-explanatory, and the rules for this follow the same rules from the game. The one thing I wanted to point out is that this hot and cold zone you're able to change by just toggling the colors by clicking on the squares. The next tab is the Pitcher tab. Like in the game, you can change top speed, control, stamina, and build up a pitcher's pitch arsenal. Once you select a pitch type for a given pitch, you'll get access to the movement you can update, which will go up to 7, depending on the pitch. 2 seams only go up to 3. And it will also open up the opportunity for you to have a second pitch in that pitch slot. So if for some reason you have a pitcher that has 2 slider types, you have to enter the first slider type to get access to the second slider type. And finally, we have the Special Abilities tab. Now, the special abilities here are not organized the same way that they are in the Power Pros game. I always found the way that they were organized to be a little bit confusing and difficult to find the thing that I was looking for. So I did my best to try to categorize them based off of what the special ability pertained to. So for every player there's a general section, a hitter section, and a pitcher section. And the hitter and pitcher sections are broken down more into different categories based off of what the special abilities pertain to. For hitters, the hitter ability section will show before the pitcher ability section, but if the player is a pitcher, or if we change the primary position to be a pitcher, the pitcher section will come first instead. So that's pretty much it when it comes to editing players. Now obviously you can do all of the same things by just editing the player through the game, but hopefully having access to a keyboard and mouse and being able to go on the internet easily will make it so that this editor gives you some advantages over the one in the game.